Sex is often seen as a cornerstone of human existence. But what happens when a man chooses, or is forced, to live without it? Is it possible to lead a fulfilling life without intimacy? In this thought-provoking video, we explore the biological, psychological, and societal dimensions of living without sex and what it truly means for men. We start by uncovering the biological perspective, explaining how testosterone and physical intimacy influence a man's energy, confidence, and mental health. But does the absence of sex mean a man's life is incomplete? Absolutely not. The human body is incredibly adaptable, and there are ways to channel sexual energy into personal growth, creativity, and self-discovery. Next, we dive into the psychological impact of abstinence. For some, sex is about more than just pleasure. It's about validation and connection. Yet men who practice abstinence for personal, religious, or lifestyle reasons often report increased mental clarity, a deeper sense of purpose, and even heightened focus in other areas of life. We also tackle the societal pressure that bombards men with messages equating masculinity with sexual conquest. Through movies, media, and cultural expectations, society has created a narrative that sex is a measure of a man's worth. But the truth is, a man's value lies far beyond his sexual. From a biological standpoint, sex plays a significant role in the survival of the species. It's hardwired into us as an essential mechanism for reproduction. Testosterone, the hormone that drives male libido, is responsible for much more than just desire. It fuels confidence, energy, and even motivation in everyday life. But does this mean that a man cannot function without sex? Science says otherwise. The human body is incredibly adaptable. While sex might enhance mental and physical well-being, it's not an absolute necessity for survival. Think of monks or celibate individuals who have thrived without it, channeling their energy into other pursuits. 1. The biological perspective. Let's start with biology. Sex is a natural human instinct. It's how our species survives, and it's deeply connected to the hormone testosterone in men. Testosterone fuels a man's sex drive, energy levels, and even his competitive spirit. But here's the truth. While sex is biologically important for reproduction, it's not essential for survival. There are men, monks, celibates, or even individuals focused on personal growth who live healthy, productive lives without it. The human body is incredibly adaptable. Over time, men who abstain from sex often report shifts in energy, finding fulfillment in other areas of their lives. 2. The psychological impact scene cuts to a man journaling, reflecting on his life. Gentle music plays in the background. But what about the mind? Sex isn't just about physical release. It's about connection, intimacy, and validation. For many men, it's tied to their sense of identity, their self-worth, and their ability to bond emotionally. Without sex, some men may feel lonely, frustrated, or even question their masculinity. But here's the surprising part. Studies show that abstaining from sex can actually enhance mental clarity, reduce stress, and foster a deeper connection with oneself. Take monks, for example. These men devote their lives to a higher purpose, and their abstinence from sex isn't about denial. It's about channeling that energy into spiritual and personal growth. For the average man, this principle applies too. It's about finding meaning beyond physical intimacy. 3. The influence of American culture. Now let's talk about culture. In the United States, sex is everywhere. It's in our movies, music, advertisements, even in the conversations we have with friends. Society often equates masculinity with sexual conquest. But this narrative is flawed. Men are constantly pressured to prove their worth through their sex lives, and when they don't fit that mold, they feel like something's missing. The truth is, Masculinity isn't about how many partners you've had or how often you're intimate. It's about your character, your resilience, and your ability to nurture deep, meaningful connections. It's about being a man of purpose, not just passion. Sex is everywhere. It's in the news, in the YouTube videos you watch, and practically every television show or movie you've ever seen. But what happens if you never have sex? Would you explode? Would you die? It is important to remember that everyone is unique and everyone's body will react in different ways. But let's look at some common physical and mental side effects of never having sex. First, we will examine the physical ramifications for the body if someone never has sex. There are a lot of misconceptions about what will happen to your body from a lack of sex, which we will debunk later, but the truth may be even scarier. Men who have regular sex and ejaculate more frequently have a lower risk of prostate cancer. This means that if you never have sex as a male, you are actually at a higher risk of getting prostate cancer. The reason for this is that humans evolved, like all living things on this planet, to be reproduction machines. Whether you like sex or not, your body's main purpose is to reproduce, because that is how all living things evolved. The body needs to release old sperm to create newer, more viable sperm. Just like with other equipment, if the male genitalia is not used frequently, there can be problems or a breakdown in the system. While it is not yet clear what the precise cause of prostate cancer is, studies suggest that men who have frequent sex or ejaculations tend to have a lower risk. So, if a male never has sex, he should at least be masturbating. This will be a common theme. Some of the benefits of sex can also be obtained from self-release, but not all. Either way, if you are a male who never has sex, you should consider doing regular prostate checks. For females who never have sex, there are different repercussions for the body. Sex strengthens the pelvic floor muscles that support the bladder. If a female never has sex, they may find themselves with a weak bladder. This could lead to leakage or incontinence. Sex is a physical activity, and the muscles involved need a workout every now and then. If you never have sex, these muscles aren't exercised, which leads to them becoming weaker. It turns out that if females are not strengthening the muscles used during sex, it can negatively affect other body systems. That being said, females can also achieve the benefits of sex from self-pleasure. It turns out that in humans, just simulating the act of sex can trick the body into providing many of the benefits associated with the act. Another negative effect women who never have sex may encounter is that the vagina may be drier than someone who is engaged in sexual activity. This is not necessarily a problem, other than that it can become uncomfortable. So, if a female has never had sex and feels discomfort in her genitalia, it may be due to a lack of lubrication around the muscles and organs. Again, this problem can be solved by masturbating. At some point in their life, someone who has never had sex may want to engage in the activity. If this is the case, the lack of sex in previous years may hinder the carnal act. If someone has gone their whole life without having sex, it could take longer than expected for arousal to begin. This could happen because the body would be feeling all new sensations, and since they would be different from anything felt before, it could take a while for the necessary fluids to flow. This seems counterintuitive, as you would expect someone's body that has never had sex to be raring to go. However, the longer someone goes without ever having sex, the longer it takes for the body to prepare for the activity. Your body needs to create and dump hormones into the bloodstream. It then increases the blood flow to areas of the body that have never or very infrequently been used. This can take a while, especially for someone who has never had sex before. Whether someone is male or female, never having intercourse can be connected to higher blood pressure. Several studies have shown that people who have regular sex tend to have lower blood pressure. Therefore, the opposite can also be true. Someone who has never had sex may have higher blood pressure than if they did have coitus. The most likely reason for this is the correlation between having sex and the lowering of stress hormones in the body. If a person never has sex, those same stress hormones will be higher. Someone who has more stress tends to have higher blood pressure. This is a serious health concern a celibate person should be aware of. They should absolutely find other ways to lower their stress levels and blood pressure. Like we've said before, this can be done through masturbation, but there are other options as well, such as meditation. Again, our bodies evolved to be sex machines, therefore they expect to have a release every now and then. High blood pressure would definitely be a negative side effect of never having sex, but there is something else that sex may help your body with that you weren't even aware of. Having sex, or more specifically, having orgasms, has been linked to benefits for someone's immune system. Psychologists Karl Charnetsky and Francis Brennan Jr. conducted a study where they took saliva samples from people who frequently had sex and those who did not, and found surprising results. In the patients who were having sex, their saliva contained higher concentrations of immunoglobulin A, an antibody used to fight off the common cold. Therefore, there may be health benefits to the immune system for someone who is having sex. If this is true, then someone who has never had sex may find themselves getting sick more frequently than others. The reason for this boost in the immune system may have more to do with close proximity to another human during sex than the act itself. Unfortunately, this boost to your immune system may not be something you can get from masturbation, since it is only a party of one. So, it would seem that never having sex may have negative physical effects on the body. But what about the mental effects? Are people who never have sex at risk of higher mental health issues? Since everyone is different, there is no absolute definitive answer. But someone who has never had sex may be at a higher risk of certain negative mental health issues. Continued in next message due to character limit. Continuation. As we said before, the act of having sex releases certain hormones that lower stress levels in the body. This can be achieved through masturbation as well. But another important mental health benefit of sex is the feeling associated with physical intimacy, something that cannot be obtained through self-pleasure. Someone who has never had sex before may develop what psychologists call skin hunger or touch starvation. This occurs when a lack of close physical contact results in negative mental health issues. The intimacy during sex cannot be replicated, even if someone spends a lot of time around other people. The physical contact and sensations during sex are sometimes necessary. If someone has never had sex, their body may react negatively to the lack of intimacy. It would not be surprising for someone who has never had sex to feel isolated or insecure. This could be caused by an imbalance in hormones in the body due to a lack of sexual contact. The change in the chemical composition of the body from sex is not just because it feels good or pleasurable, but because it is something intimate and shared between individuals. If someone who has never had sex feels depressed or lonely, even if they are surrounded by others, it could be because their brain is craving intimacy. In these cases, we only have evolution to blame yet again. Our DNA is selfish and wants to be passed on to the next generation. Therefore, almost all of us are programmed to want to have sex. One way our body tricks us into copulating is by rewarding us, not just with pleasurable physical sensations, but with mental stimulation as well. The brain of someone who has never had sex could be starved for the intimacy of it. This, in turn, could cause negative side effects on mental health. So really, for someone who has never had sex, their brain begins to rebel against them. When your brain is fighting you, it's going to be a bad time. However, as mentioned before, everyone is different. Some people actually don't need to have sex at all and are still healthy and happy. This can be due to a low sex drive, or because the person is asexual. The human brain is a magnificent thing and can even overcome our biological urges in some people. In others, the brain may be programmed to just not crave sex. And for these individuals, never having sex most likely comes with no side effects. There are misconceptions about what happens to someone who has never had sex, so let's break them down. Someone may have told you that if a female doesn't have sex, their vagina closes up. Not only is this untrue, but think of how many other complications that would cause for that person other than not being able to have intercourse. A female who has never had sex will most likely have a smaller opening to the vagina than